Welcome back to the 3M podcast, where we explore life, relationships, self development, and mental health. We're your host. I'm JR.
Dr. Yo-Yo.
And Nick.
Today we're diving into our segment called Career Tactics. It's a segment that takes you behind the scenes and inside the minds of individuals who've achieved intriguing careers.
Join us as we dive deep into the lives and stories of these remarkable individuals.
All right, today we're excited to interview one of our longtime friends and Dr. Yo-Yo and my older brother, who'll give us behind the scenes of being a search and rescue instructor helicopter pilot. Let's get into it.
All right, so without further ado, Autopilot.
Let's do it.
Autopilot, welcome, man.
Hey guys, how you guys doing today?
You excited to be here?
Good.
Yeah, I am, man. Glad to be here.
Man, it's one of those Saturdays, where you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you just get rolling slowly, you didn't have your morning coffee yet, so...
Oh, no, I had to get the morning coffee before coming here. I had to get that in, yeah.
Yeah. So how you doing, man? I mean, some recent achievements that we'll bring up probably a little bit later. Congratulations on that. And how's everything else with you?
Everything else is going good. Nothing much to complain about. The biggest thing that was on the docket was what we may bring up later on. But besides that, everything is just good. I feel blessed to be here.
That's awesome,
yeah, man. You're doing good in your career. That's what we're here to talk about, your career. And, maybe we can bring some good points and tips for people who are interested in becoming a helicopter pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's just get into, your background. Why don't you tell us, where you're from and sort of your road of how you got to where you are now.
So, well, of course, the first thing you can't start a story without more or less talking about where I grew up. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, which, for those who don't know, it's an island in the Caribbean. It's the last island in the chain just before you get to South America. But I grew up there. But the good thing is that our dad is a pilot, and then also our grandfather was a pilot. So in my mind, I've always wanted to be a pilot. It's just the pathway to becoming a pilot was not the direct path. I kind of did a sidetrack first and then ended up falling into this career.
Yeah. Do you think, for people that are coming from the Caribbean or other places of the world, that's probably they have to do more of an indirect path like you did?
Well, I've seen both paths throughout the time. I've seen guys who come up here and this is aviation becomes their second career. Right, so they come up like a typical person from the Caribbean will come up to go to college. They'll do engineering, business, whatever. Go do that for several years, and then end up realizing their main love was aviation. So they then end up coming or then they end up having to come back and then invest in a second way in order to become a pilot. So I've seen both ways, and then you see the people who just come here straight and just become a pilot, but then they go back. Right, a lot of people don't have the opportunity, like you guys and myself, to stay here.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think it's harder to get pilot training in the Caribbean in general? So people come up here to get that private pilot's license all the way through and then go back down to the Caribbean or wherever it may be for the airlines?
So let's talk about, I can't talk about specifically about the airline aspect or the fixed wing aspect, but I could tell you about the helicopters. In Trinidad, there are probably no helicopter training in Trinidad. Maybe now they do, but definitely when I left Trinidad, which was probably to come back up for college. When I came up for college and left Trinidad, never really went back. They had no flight schools for helicopters in Trinidad. So if that was a path you wanted, there's no way you could do that. You have to come to most likely the States to get it done.
So wait a minute. So Eve, so I'm curious because that's difficult, right? So no helicopter training, right? Not really training unless you came to the States.
Mm-hmm.
But right, you're a legacy, right? Granddad was a pilot, dad's a pilot. So knowing all that, was it easier or more difficult, trying to get into being a helicopter pilot?
So okay, to be specific, my grandfather was a fixed wing, right? He flew in World War II in a Spitfire. My
I just want
dad.
to, Eve. I just want to say you mentioned fixed wing for the people out there that don't know what is that.
Okay, so we have rotor wing, which is helicopters, which is my career, the field that I'm currently working in, and then there's fixed wing. So rotor wing means the wings spin, it's rotary, and then fixed means the blades don't spin, so they stay in one position. So aka planes, airlines, Cessnas, the regular aircraft. When people think about flying, that is normally fixed wing operation.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry for cutting you off.
Oh yeah, no. And JR, what was your question one more time?
So you were talking about you're talking about your grandfather's flying, or our grandfather's flying Spitfires, and then you're going to say,
oh yes, yeah. Okay, so was it harder? Well, okay, so my grandfather flew planes fixed wing. My dad flew planes fixed wing, but then I had all intentions of doing the same thing, but what happened was, I think it was in the early 2000s. I can't remember. I can't take you back exactly to the date, but in the early 2000s, they were having a lot of layoffs in the fixed wing. The fixed wing industry was not a very stable one to go into. The helicopter industry, on the other hand, was very stable, right? So when the choice came that I could go either fixed wing or helicopter, helicopters just looked better at the time. Right. And I ended up just taking that path, and shoot, how many years? It's about 13 years later, I am where I'm at now.
Wow. So let's just backtrack just 1 second, okay? So you're in Trinidad, you're deciding to go to college in the United States, right? So can you just take us from that path and move into the United States, and then just quick 2 minutes through that education, and then the transition into that decision to go to aviation?
Okay, so the first part is in the Caribbean, they don't prep you for SATs. So you finish up your high school, and then there's a level of schooling that typically is called upper six, that then you do if you're staying in colleges in the Caribbean. But if you want to come to the States, of course, you have to do your SATs. You have to kind of do that after you finish high school. So you finish high school, you graduate, then you have to go do SAT classes. So that took me like about 6 months to a year, aka took about 6 months to prep. After I did that, and I got, I put in my applications, that put me into the following year for college. So I then came up to Florida, to Florida Institute of Technology for electrical engineering. Now, I never wanted to do electrical engineering. I always wanted to be a pilot. So my intention was, and actually the pressure was actually more on on our dad. My dad was like, no, don't be a pilot, go be an engineer. But my intentions was to get the engineering degree and then just join the military and go fly a fighter jet or something like that, right? So that was my intent from the get-go. But then as I came to FIT and I was doing the engineering thing, it just wasn't something that I could see as even the thing I want to fall back on. It just wasn't for me, right?
Sure.
So I did that for about 2.5 years, hated it. And then actually, I don't know how much you guys want to get into it, but the story of me ended up taking the path to helicopters it's somewhat of an interesting one.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So what happened? It fell on me. Like, okay, so I finished up, or I was doing electrical engineering, didn't like it. Decided, like, you know what, I'm at a bar and I'm talking to another guy from Trinidad. I'm just talking to this other guy from Trinidad, and we're talking about me changing my degree from electrical engineering to aviation management with flight. Right? So he then looks at me and he's like, Otto, why don't you just go fly helicopters? And I was like, helicopters? I know nothing about helicopters. I only know about fixed wing. It's been part of my entire life growing up with my dad and stuff like that. I'm like, helicopters? He says, yeah, man, they work like a 14 days on, 14 days off. They get paid around this bracket, or 28 on, 28 off. So I look at him, it's like, you're telling me I am going to get paid more than the average person significantly, and I only have to work half the year? So the next day, I call my dad, because the discussion was, okay, start looking into like maybe changing your degree. So I call my dad, and I was like, hey, Dad, I have something to talk to you about. And he's like, before you say anything, what do you think about helicopters?
Wait, Dad
Oh,
said
snap.
this?
Yeah, that's how I ended up where I
Whoa!
was.
What
Right?
is
He's
this,
like,
man?
What?
What is
yeah, he's
this?
like,
Yeah,
what do you
as
think
a
about
stand.
helicopters? And I was like, Dad, that is literally what I was calling to talk to you about. And it was like, enough said. Find a flight school.
What? That's
Wow. I did
crazy.
not know
That's
this.
wild.
This
He
is
brought up
sick.
helicopters to you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It continues that I
That's
found
wild.
a helicopter company right here. I'm not going to name drop anything because the company actually went Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and it had a whole illegal like side like fallout from it. Well, it's right here in this town, and I contacted them, and they did something that was kind of underhanded. The plan was we'll pay for flight training out of pocket. I was working as a personal trainer and stuff, a little bit of money, but Dad was going to help me towards my flight training, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, this company did something underhanded. Paying out of pocket means you don't apply for a loan for us, you don't do anything, but this company did. They applied for a $75,000 loan, but this is just as you guys just moved up here.
Yeah.
So when y'all just moved up here, we just bought a house, we bought like another car, all this other stuff, right? So then they tried to run my and Dad's credits in order to add the 75, and it dropped. It was turned down, which thank goodness this happened, because we got a notification that it got turned down through, I don't know if it's Credit Karma or something like that, but we were notified that this happened, not from the company, but from like an outside bureau.
Right.
It got turned down. The discussion between Dad and myself was, we don't know what just happened there, why they applied for this, but let's wait 1 month. So we waited 1 month. Everything seems fine. This is like a Friday. The class starts on the Wednesday. So it was like, okay, call them on Monday and tell them that you're ready to start the class on Wednesday. So I call on Monday, no answer. Big thing in the news, this company is out of business.
Shit.
Thousands of students are out of
sketchy.
Students who just started like a week before that's out of $75,000 for their license is gone. That's it. They owe whatever bank $75,000, and
nothing to show for
I
it.
dodged the bullet for that.
Wow, dude, that is
something
incredible.
was looking out for you, bro.
Yeah,
for real.
Very
higher
much
powers
so.
looking out. That's
so
awesome.
I ended up later in a big meeting in Orlando at another flight school. It's a hangar full of about maybe 100 and something people that flew in for this meeting because of this company failure, and everyone was screwed in this hangar, and I'm the only one sitting there like, I'm good. I'm just looking for a stool.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I got into one of the biggest helicopter flight schools that's also associated with a big helicopter company. That right after that, and normally there's a 6-month waiting process, but I walked in just as they had a cancellation for a class that started the following week.
Wow.
So I ended up just walking in. Oh yeah, and then starting flight training the following week. So I dodged so many bullets before I started my first day of flight school.
All right, let's pause right there, because you just said a bunch of incredible things of like everything just lining up just right. People talk about in aviation the Swiss cheese model for things that could go wrong, right? The holes just lining up just right in Swiss cheese for an accident to happen. But it seems like the Swiss cheese model worked in the opposite. For you in this case, it's just like the holes lining up just perfect for you to just walk right into this career. I do have one question though. Do you think that, and I didn't realize or didn't remember at least this whole $75,000 debacle, had you or Dad in this case lost $75,000 to this company, do you think you would be where you are today?
No. I could just imagine, because that money is gone. Like, okay, there were litigations and stuff like that, and I don't know what falls under Chapter 11 of situations like this. I was contacted by a case action lawsuit because, of course, my name was on the list of students, right? So they contacted me and they asked, well, how much money am I out? What am I doing now? And I was like, I'm out of no money. They never took it yet, right? And I told them what happened, and I told them what school I was in, and I'm doing just fine. And they were like, you're the only person out of the thousands that are on this list so far that got out scot free.
I do have one more question for you, just for the listeners and guys interested in going into this career. Is it normal for a flight school to request $75,000 up front for training? Because there are different
No,
styles of training, right, in different flight schools.
there's a lot, but there's a lot more to this situation, and there's a reason the company went under. But I don't think it's all speculation on my part, right?
Okay.
So, and I'm in no place to talk about it besides that, because the last thing I want is any legal action on you guys for having this show, or then coming back to me for this speculating what I believe may have happened. But it's not common.
That's a good point.
It's not common that you take that money up front. Most schools do it in like maybe segments. They will say, okay, well, it's going to cost you this much for your PPL. But most places just say, pay as you go. You fly the aircraft, you pay. You do work with your instructor, you pay. And then typically that's what it is.
Right,
Okay.
and there are different like codes for those, real quick, right? There are different codes for a school that will take money in chunks, like the other one, or then as pay as you go.
So, okay, some schools are Part 61, which is more the one that is pay as you go. Right.
Yeah.
And when I say part, this is not to get into the weeds. We're talking about regulations, FAR part, right? Federal Air Regulations part, blah, 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 blah. And then there's a 141 program, which a 141 program is where I went to a flight school. That type of flight school is more associated to almost doing like an associate's degree. So you say, okay, I have this much credit hours of classroom I need to do. I have this much flight time, a minimum I need to do in order to do this. This school has been accredited by the FAA to meet these standards, etc., etc. You have midterms, etc., final license.
Would you recommend one type of school over the other in retrospect?
Yes. So as of right now, I am experiencing a little bit of both. So I've done the 141 and I've also done the Part 61. I've also taught in a 141. I've also taught in a Part 61. Now, the good thing about a 141 is they're structured to your training. Part 61 is fly, do as you want, fly as you want. So then there's no structure. The only structure you get is probably just before your exam, that the instructor is like, okay, I need to make sure you know all of this before I send you to do an exam. But in a 141, the FAA has reviewed their program, has said that it's good enough. So you end up getting the structure up front. That's like going to any college as accredited versus a Joe Blow, or I learned this course online and I'm just going to go do this test.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's keep it moving. So get back to the training now. You were just started in this helicopter. It went under, but let's move forward to you getting into your licenses and real quick, going through like 2 minutes in your whole process to get to whatever licenses you had as instructor.
Okay, so I have to go, the first license is the PPL, which is the private pilot's license, right? And that's like, you're just learning to walk, right? In a helicopter, you're learning to hover and do all the other aspects of like flying, right? Once you get that, then you go onto your instrument. It allows you to fly in IFR conditions. Then you get your commercial license.
Hold on, pause. Just real quick, IFR conditions. Yes. Not everyone knows what that means.
It allows you to then fly into clouds, low visibility, etc. So when you're actually like on a beautiful day, that is considered visual flight reference, VFR. IFR means instrument flight reference or flight rules, aka you can't see outside the aircraft. You're just looking at the instruments, and it gets you from point A to point B using the instruments.
Wow!
So this is how nighttime flying, right?
That falls under VFR. That's not really IFR, but it's better that you're an IFR pilot to fly at night. I recommend it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So IFR meaning instrument flight rules. You can't see, so you don't kill yourself. People like direct you around air traffic control. This is how people like shoot approaches to land in bad weather and all this, correct?
Exactly.
Awesome. All right, cool. So you get that, and now you're moving on to the next one.
Commercial. Then you get your commercial license. Again, it's like, and in my experience, my private was 141 program, which is a properly structured program. My instruments was a 141 program, properly structured program. And then commercial, there's nothing really for a commercial program. So there was one at the school, but it was just not recommended. It was just something they had, but no one did. right?
Mhm.
So the unfortunate thing is that you may finish and you could be a commercial pilot, but you know nothing about commercial op. You just know how to fly the aircraft to the commercial standard. But after learning stuff like aerial photography in a helicopter, because back then they didn't have drones, right? Aerial photography tours, like maybe some like medical operations, law enforcement flying, like all of these different type of jobs. You get a license, you know nothing about that. You just have a license.
So all
Awesome.
of those will fall under the commercial.
Yeah.
Commercial
Just
certificate,
briefly
yes.
explain what commercial is. People might not know.
Commercial means, so private means you get a license and you could go fly for fun. You could go fly with your friends. I'm not going to get into the rules behind it,
Sure.
right? But you cannot take money. You can't be paid for anything. You could get
Okay.
the instrument allows you to fly with your friends in the clouds. And then now you have the commercial means, hey, I can now make money, but then you are only about 200 and something hours or something like that, 150 hours for helicopter,
So
right? No one is hiring you with that. No one.
so you could at least charge your friends to fly them, right?
No,
In this case,
can't,
now.
actually. You can't even do that.
What?
You're so limited. Your friend, that falls under a whole other thing because your friend will come in and say, hey, oh, you're a commercial pilot, Otto. Fly me to the Bahamas. I'll be like, no, can't do it. Sorry.
Wow.
But you can do it for fun. You can
I
fly
can
for
do
fun.
it for fun, and it has to be my idea, not their idea. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, Otto, I know you have this license. I will pay for your gas. I'll pay for everything. Let's just go." I can't do it. But if I say, "Hey, I would like to go fly," right, and you could pay half the flights. That is totally different. But that falls under my private pilot's license. That has nothing to do with commercial. Commercial is a whole other set of rules that and it just breaks down to like what can you do? You could do like firefighting, right?
Mhm.
Which no firefighter is going to hire. Company is going to hire you with 150 hours. So you could make money, but no one will hire you at 150 hours. So what you then
Wow.
have to do? You have to become an instructor.
Whoa.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
then we have the interesting thing of the guys who are teaching people to fly are the guys with the least experience flying,
That is crazy. That
That's
sounds
interesting.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Wait. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah. So
Jay, go ahead.
you get the commercial license, and like you said, you come out of it. There's no structure, so you got the license. You can legally fly, but you really don't know what you're doing.
Not really.
But in order to increase the experience, they're like, okay, go train other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Go teach
Yeah.
other people how to fly of something you just learned how to do.
That
Yeah,
gets
that's
you
unreal,
hours.
man.
That gets you
It
the
gets you
hours
hours.
because the next
Wow.
step
Wow.
is and in jobs, and this is of course back in like 2015 ish, 2013 area is what I'm looking at. Back then, in order for you to take another step in your career, you had to have a minimum of about maybe 1,500 hours. So
Wow.
you're finishing with your instructor about 200, right? 215, 20. You still have to make it all the way up to 1,500 hours before another, like a tour company, is even willing to look at you.
And when you say finish when you're with your instructor, you mean your CFI, which is
CFII.
Okay, so just explain CFI, CFII in like 30 seconds.
CFI means Certified Flight Instructor, means that I could teach you to do flight maneuvers. Certified Flight Instructor with Instrument, CFII, means now I could teach you how to fly over your instruments in the clouds if you're flying like
Awesome.
one of those type of aircraft.
Okay, so just to get that straight, so CFI, you can train people to get like their private pilot's license.
Private and commercial.
CFII and commercial, and CFII, you're training people for their instrument or IFR check ride, correct?
Yes.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so you finished your CFII at about 200 hours, and then you're like, okay, my only two options to get to 1,500 where somebody would hire me, where you could finally start to get paid for this skill that you've developed.
Mm-hmm.
Your two options are: one, you pay for the hours yourself, or two, you become an instructor and then teach other people and develop your hours that way. Is
Yes,
that correct?
that is
So
correct.
I think what's important for the listeners out there is what they're going to be interested in knowing is when can they finally start getting paid for this career, and that's going to be after 1,500 hours. So
Well,
if you can quickly dive into each part of the training really quick and say how long it took you to get that training and then how much that training cost will
Yeah.
be, pretty
Okay.
useful.
So
but
helicopters, and these are numbers that are all the way back. I would say, as I said, I started flight training in 2008. Everything is inflated now, right? So you could have gone zero to hero in the ballpark of somewhere between 75 to about $100,000, right? Meaning,
what do you mean by zero
fl-
to hero? Where's hero?
hero is never touching an aircraft before to being a certified flight instructor, probably with a CFII, only probably in one aircraft. If you start to add different types of aircraft, all of a sudden now you are adding additional time. Because I started off in something called a Schweitzer 300 CBI. Google it if you guys like. It's gonna be
Sure.
hard for me to describe them, right?
Yeah.
So this one is one of the most popular aircraft back then. I did all my training in it, but what happened? They're discontinuing that aircraft. So now Robinson is another group of helicopters that they were taking over. So the problem is I have no time in Robinson, or barely any time in Robinson. So I ended up finishing up with my license. I'm not even really being marketable, right? So I had to start to squeeze in different things. So what I squeezed in is like, okay, I did a R-44, which is a 4-seater helicopter transition, because I was like about 170 pounds. My instructors are about 200 pounds. The smaller one was a tough aircraft for us to fly due to weight limitations. So we flew the bigger one. I did long line training on that, and long line means is that I'm flying a helicopter with a long rope, about somewhere between 75 to 150-foot long rope under the aircraft, and I'm like slinging or hoisting pipes, poles, different type of stuff, because I was just trying to get myself marketable. So I did that course. I also began my transition into the smaller helicopter, which every flight school has, and that was, of course, another cost. So that's why I kind of fluctuated from about 75 to 100. Now I'm pretty sure a transition or full license from zero to hero is probably going to be over $100,000. Like if you put it in today's money and today's inflation.
So
Yeah.
overall, you're saying to get to CFIIs, roughly it could be up to $100,000. And realizing that, guys, helicopters are more expensive than fixed wing aircraft by a little bit. So getting there in a fixed wing may be a little bit cheaper than that. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes and no, because just remember, for a fixed wing, you need 250 hours in order to get I believe, your commercial license,
Oh,
versus a
wow.
helicopter is 150 hours.
Oh,
So
okay.
in the end, and actually, I think fixed wing also has a lot more complications, because as a helicopter, I don't need additional training for a second engine. So
Yep.
in fixed wing, you have to do, or planes, you have to do, in order to become marketable, because every jet you get onto, Southwest, any airline, Southwest, Delta, anybody, they have at least two engines on the side. So you
Yeah.
need a multi-engine certification or on your license in order to do it. And a helicopter, you don't. So
Wow.
there's pros and cons to both sides. There are costs or stuff that only helicopters have to deal with, and then there are costs that only planes have to deal with. So in the end, would I say planes or helicopter? I think planes in the end will come out to be a little bit more expensive
Wow. Okay.
on the full program.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, but
And,
thank
and,
you.
and while you're doing these courses, how are you able to take care of yourself financially? And how long did that entire process take?
Well, financially, look, I was in a blessed enough position that the family moved to where I was. So in order for me to facilitate flight school, I had to move home. Right? I
Well,
can afford
Gotcha.
rent. No
Gotcha.
way, no how I can afford rent. Is you wake up every morning, you end up at the flight school Monday to Friday, like any class. So it's like being on campus, but there's no campus. You have to drive in the morning, show up to flight school, do that stuff, and then after that, in the evening, what did I do? I was like a personal trainer. I taught martial arts for a few years, and then on the weekends, I was a bouncer at a club.
Gotcha.
all right, let's kind of move on. I do want to cover one thing. So, guys, there was a little bit of a misspeak earlier. It doesn't take $1,500 or 1,500 hours rather to get a job. You can get a job. in aviation under that. And a lot of guys do, and a lot of airlines, if you're doing fixed wing or other companies, have programs that'll get you through up to 1,500 hours. So you do, or you can get a job before that. But let's move on to you now being an instructor. So you went to be a CFI, and just talk for a couple minutes on that transition and that whole experience.
So the toughest part after getting, and this is the thing about any aviation job, is that you're never guaranteed a job, period. Meaning that you finish up all your training, you're not guaranteed the next step, right? Which is, okay, I have my flight instructor certificate, I apply. The first thing, of course, you apply to is the flight school you're at, because they know you. They've seen you throughout your training and etc. But my case was my limitation on the aircraft they've been shifting to. So they interviewed, I went through the interview process. I got a job offer with no start date. But then when the start date or the time they were ballparking that I should start, the contract was shifted from Florida to Louisiana. I contacted the Louisiana location. Well, they contacted me. They asked me about my flight time and stuff like that. And then they did not have the aircraft that I had most of my flight time in. They didn't have it. So I was kind of out of luck there. Again, Swiss cheese lines up again. I'm having a bad weekend. I actually had my car got hit this weekend. I just sold like my motorcycle to get a car because I'm looking like, okay, I need a car for this type of job, etc. So the car gets hit. I have to pay to get the car repaired. I'm like, okay, well, this is money for me to buy another car, right? And then a buddy of mine contacts me from Orlando and is like, hey, Otto, are you still looking for a job? I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for a job. And he's actually another Trinidadian, right? So that's a kind of good sign so far. Trinis have been directing me to the right location. Yeah, so nice. I get this job in Orlando. The pro is I start flying. They had all the aircraft. They had the aircraft I was already signed off in, and they had the two other aircraft that I just need a little bit more time to become an instructor. Did that for a while, but the unfortunate thing is I was not making enough money in Orlando to move forward. I wasn't flying enough, and I had to go. I couldn't afford to stay there anymore, so I ended up going online, looked for a job, threw out application, and I started at another company. I gave Orlando like 6 months to a year, and then I moved on.
What was that job in Orlando?
It was mainly a flight instructor job. I did aerial photography. I did Part 91 owner flying, meaning that I flew a owner in his own aircraft. All right. Mm-hmm. So he was a big real estate guy in Orlando. So I'll take him to all the different properties he's working on. I've done like flights into expensive hotels. I was doing like I've flown above golf tournaments, right? That I'm there with other news helicopters, and he's on the phone talking to a guy down there saying, "Hey man, we want to come down for brunch," right? And they're like, "No, the tournament is going on." So like, so I did a lot of that just around that area.
Was there a cool story with Tiger Woods?
I don't know if I should say the one about Tiger Woods.
I want to hear it.
You know about that story.
Find out. You may finally find out. Oh, that's the guy.
No, let's hear it, man. Let's hear it.
I have two stories with that guy, but let's leave that there just in case.
Oh man, come on, dude! I want to hear.
Oh, okay. You're breaking my legs.
Yeah. You're twisting my arm here.
Don't you?
Twisting my arm.
Hey, man.
So I'm there, and we're all hovering. All right. So newscopters, myself, we're just kind of hanging out. All right. And he's talking to a guy down at the bottom at the tournament. It's like, no, don't come now. Go do whatever you're gonna do, the inspections on the properties, and then when you come back, the tournament should be done. You guys can come in and then. I'll land, they'll go eat, drink, have fun, and then I fly them back to the airport when they're done. Well, he kind of touches me on the shoulder and say, okay, no, go. So in order for me to depart, I just lowered some power and I dipped the aircraft down in order to accelerate out. Well, the type of helicopter I'm flying is almost like the Huey. The blades are like the Huey, so it makes a pop, 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 pop sound, right? Well, apparently pop, 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 pop was just about when Tiger was. Right?
In his backswing.
Yeah, so he was not happy about that, and he was like, from what I heard, he was like, "Oh, the bloody helicopters! This shouldn't be going on." Da 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 da. And then we ended up not making it to the
Oh,
end of the
snap.
tournament with anything.
You
But-
made Tiger Woods lose his ball in the water, bro. You just
Yes. Right, so I ended up, that's the Orlando story. Well, now I'm in West Palm Beach, and I'm actually flying my butt off at this company. And now
Okay, hold on. We just pause real quick. All right, before we move on from Orlando, how much money were you making? Would you say like a year there at that first job?
Probably 20 a year.
20. Okay.
20
Yeah.
God damn. All right.
No, it was bad.
Yeah, boy.
I left
Yeah.
for a reason. It was
Yeah.
bad, really
Yeah.
bad.
Now, and that's like huge, right? Because after $100,000 investment, you start making $20K a year.
Nothing.
You know, that's ridiculous. So,
Yes.
anyways, go on.
And just to add in, for anyone who's listening that is interested in being an instructor now, when I talk to instructors around now, even with the inflation of right now, so flight training is more expensive, the world is more expensive, guys are still in the ballpark of 30, 40 for their first year to 2 years.
Wow.
While their
Poverty
loans are
levels.
still calling in and saying, hey, you still need to pay loans, you need to pay your car payment, blah, 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 blah. So just a warning, be ready for that if that's the path you're going to go. But the story gets better.
All right. Go ahead.
All right.
All right. West
Right.
Palm now.
So West Palm
Tiger Woods.
now, I'm going from flying about maybe 20 hours a month, right? And then ground with students to flying a bad month for me became 100 hours of flight time.
Wow.
A good month was, my best month was like 140 something hours in a month.
That's a lot.
But that's not
That is a lot.
including, that's not even including ground and all the other stuff that I did.
Jesus.
Right. So that became very good. I did, again, aerial photography, instruction, and then I started to get additional jobs with Florida Wildlife Commission. I did deer surveys, meaning that we flew the same location that they give deer tags for hunting. And we fly up and down and we count the deers, like how many we see. And then we have to figure out how many does, bucks, fawns are in the area. And that was some cool flying, because you're talking about treetop height, almost like herding the deer, because you need to get close enough to see what it is. Is it a male, a female, or a baby? Like, you have to get close enough. So the moment you see them, you chase them down, you count them, and then you break off. Right. So that was like the most fun flying I've done in a while, up to this point. I've also done frost patrol, meaning that I, like, for the farmers around winter time, even in Florida, the crops get so cold that they will die. And in order for the farmer to get insurance on the crops, he have to show that he did everything to keep the crops alive. So that means at night, in 0 dark 30, in freezing conditions, I am about 20-30 feet above a crop, flying up and down it, like if it's like if I'm crop dusting, right?
Wow.
So I did that. That was probably I would say the
cool.
sketchiest flying, or the most dangerous flying I've ever done, was that type of flying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but,
man, that's crazy.
But then we get to another Tiger Woods story.
All right, Tiger part 2. Let's hear it.
Right? Part 2 is I'm teaching people how to. So one of the things going through training, I noticed that my instructors never taught me anything about a job. Meaning I did not know how to do aerial photography. I didn't know how to do, like, I worked with the West Palm Beach Sheriff Department, and I did a lot of their initial training, and I did advanced auto rotation training. And for those who don't know what auto rotation is it's the emergency maneuver helicopters perform if they lost their engine and they need to bring the helicopter from, like, say, 1,000 feet to the ground safely. Right? So I'm doing this type of training with my students in order to get them ready for the next step. And because I saw a disconnect between flight training and the job. So I started to do that training during their commercial.
Sure.
And what to do? I'm flying down the beach in West Palm, and I'm like, hey guys, this is Tiger Woods' house. No one is ever really there because I fly up and down. So I was like, just fly around the house, right? And just keep it in the same position, so the photographer could practice doing photo shoots. So I'm sitting in the helicopter, probably just like this, right? And all I hear is my students say, "Someone's down there," right?
Oh shit!
And look, here's Tiger.
Oh!
Oh no!
So I look over. So we got out of there, right?
Helicopters!
Well, he brought it's paparazzi, right? And I'm there just sitting in the helicopter, not paying attention, right? And because we're just practicing a maneuver around the point.
Yeah.
It just so happens it's his house.
I'm gonna get that son of a bitch!
If it's the last thing I do!
Has no hiding in the same guy, right? But there he is on his tennis court, looking straight up at us.
Part two.
Oh my god, dude, you're Tiger Woods' nemesis. I hate helicopters.
But
funny.
it was really good. West Palm Beach was the thing that actually got me. Man, the Swiss cheeses will keep lining up as we go, because I got this job because I had a job in Orlando and the experience of all this photography and stuff like that. So the owner of this flight school took me in or hired me because he needed a guy with that experience. Right. Yeah. So I didn't get much flight time in Orlando, but I got the experience of this job. So that got me this job. Wow. Now, this job, and I'm pretty sure Nick is going to ask, and what he's going to ask is, well, how much did I make here?
Yep. I already have that in my notes.
The money.
How much I made here was my first year, I made like about 45. Right. So I doubled more or less what I was making in Orlando. So about 45. My second year, I made 55.
Okay.
Right. Again, I have no kids. I have no other. I wasn't married, and I had a pro. My pro was my brothers were going to school in Boca, right? So guess who got to live somewhere for free again? This guy. Right?
This guy.
But let's talk about it. The drive back and forth was 45 minutes each way. I had to fly a full day, and then sometimes I had to fly nights, and I was doing 145 hours. So here's one danger to let anyone know. It's called, and I'm pretty sure Yo-Yo will talk, all of you guys will talk about it, chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
Chronic fatigue hits you, and I never knew what it was. And what I used to call it downwind naps. Downwind naps meant that I will take off in the helicopter, and the aircraft will turn in the traffic pattern of an airport, right? It'll be turning right. It does a loop around to come back to the runway. My brain will shut off on me on the downwind. I'll just fall asleep. But then tones of the aircraft will bring me back. So it'll just be like, right? And then a tone change, and then I wake up. And the thing is, you don't know. It's called micro naps. You don't know you're shutting off. Your brain is just realizing you're safe. Shut down. Oh, you're not safe. Wake up. Right? And I finally drew the line because during an emergency maneuver, I fell asleep during the emergency maneuver. And the only thing that woke me up was the sound of the aircraft. Something didn't sound right. And I woke up and I'm looking at the ground. At that point, I ended up doing a full throttle back on my flying. All right. I just stopped flying nights. I stopped doing a lot of extra stuff because at this rate I would have probably killed myself. Right. So this is something else you have to pay attention to of when you're especially when you're a person on the grind, you may grind yourself into a bad situation. Right.
Absolutely.
And I was right on the cusp.
And that's the whole thing in aviation of operational risk management, right? It's the assessing yourself and making sure that you're good to actually execute the job. And a lot of times complacency sets in or a matrix where you may, just kind of push you off. It's like, oh, I've done this so many times. Like, even though I'm not 100%, I'll still do this flight. So you have to assess that real time. But I do have to set the record straight here. I'm going to ask the question. You're saying downwind naps and stuff like that. You were as an instructor, so you weren't actually flying the aircraft at that time.
No, I was not in control of the aircraft at the time. But I am the responsibility of the aircraft. Right? But this is something I didn't know was happening. That's the thing is you don't know it's happening until
it just cuts off.
you realize, how did I get here? Like, how did
Yeah.
I end up in this position with the aircraft with this wind like this? And I
Yeah.
realized I was out, gone,
Yep.
sleeping.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
you say that. I think I've had experiences when I was like either a med student or an intern where you're in surgery, but you're holding retractors, you're not really doing anything, and I would pass out completely standing up,
What?
Yeah,
holding the
yeah.
retractors,
Yep.
and then wake up probably, I don't know, 2 minutes later. I have no idea.
Yep.
Dude,
And
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Micro
Yeah. And it's
naps.
a
it
good point.
happens.
It's worse than anything else, right? It's the same as like getting behind the wheel and that's happening because it occurs in, like you said, you don't even recognize it. It's like I wake up and it's like, wait a minute, I was passed out. What's going on?
I don't remember
You
the
know?
last 3 blocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So be
Dude.
careful. That's the thing, that when you are working hard in any career and you're like, I need to get this done, you're pushing past your limit. Your body is saying, I need rest.
No, bro, mama mentality. No rest.
Mhm.
Mama,
Yeah.
mama
David
mentality.
Goggins, who's gonna move these boats? Sleep with dick.
Goggins
Hey,
the
guys.
fatigue.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I think it's important what Otto is describing now, and I think this is something that a trend we're seeing with the people that we bring on here is like that excessive grind to get what you have to get done and to get your accomplishments. And
Yeah.
it's a trend that we see with successful people, that they're able to do these types of hard works, and that adds to their character and builds them, and then they are able to achieve great things in their career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Good point,
I
dude.
think we should, keep it moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Now you're in West Palm Beach doing this job. What was the next step?
Okay, so the next step was, the plan was for me to go flight tours in Vegas. Of course, you make friends throughout your career, either through flight school or through previous jobs. It's a small industry. So a guy that I went to flight school with is now working in Vegas, right? Doing tours. So I reach out to him. I'm saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, etc., etc. This is how much hours I have. I'll like, you think I could get a job? He's like, oh man, Otto, send me a resume. He said I sent the resume, right? And they're like, oh my goodness, they love you. Plan a trip. They want to meet you, right? Great. It's not a formal interview, but it's like, hey, come, right? So I was like, okay, cool. Well, it just so happens I'm hanging doing my job. I'm the instructor. There's also an examiner, right, that I need to send my students to get their license. Well, one of the examiners heard that I'm going to Vegas, and there's a job expo that they do every year. It's like a networking thing they do every year in Vegas. And he looks at me, he's like, hey, Otto, are you going to, I'm not going to name drop it, but are you going to this, right? And I was like, no, I'm not going to it. I'm going to go do this other thing, because I knew nothing about this job. It just so happens it's the same weekend I booked my trip.
Dude.
He's like, oh man,
Crazy.
it'll be nice to see you there. And so I contact my buddy and I was like, hey, I heard about this. Should I go to it? He's like, no, Otto, you don't need to go. I have you hooked up already. Right? And then he calls me the next day. No, I think you need to go to it.
Oh,
I spoke to my boss. And my boss says anyone that has over 1,500 hours leaves there with a job. By this point, and let me add something in. By this point, I am 2,000 hours.
Holy crap.
Why am I at 2,000 hours and still at this job? Is because back then, companies will only hire in the first portion of the year, train pilots up. And this is typically the tour guys. So they'll hire them in the early portion of the year, have them for the summer. The ones they like, they keep for the rest of the year. So if you don't make this year, you have to wait a whole year to get a job. Right?
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So where I was ready to go, I was like, and the main thing is now I also wanted to get what is called my ATP, Airline Transport Pilot's License. What that means is, in helicopters, it doesn't mean as much as it means in the planes, but it then allows me to be ready to become captain on the bigger helicopters for like the company I'm working for now. But we'll get to that point a little bit later, right? Well, we're soon about to get to that.
Hey,
Well,
just before we move on, so just not to backtrack too much, but like, how long did it take for you to get to 2,000 hours, and how long were you at the job in West Palm Beach?
So 6 months in Orlando, down in West Palm. I gave them, I think I was there for 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay.
So I went from, I can't remember how many hours I got when I left Orlando. I'm probably still, got my first job around 200 and something, say 250. So I'm probably about maybe 400. I'm about 400 hours when I get to West Palm.
Okay, and then cool, and then 2000 after 2 years. All right.
Yeah, and I was like 2200 or something like that when I left, and I can't remember at what number I got my airline transport pilot's license. I can't remember what year exactly.
All right, cool.
All right. Okay, so Swiss cheese time. So this examiner mentions this, right? This job fair. My buddy says go to the job fair. So now it's another. So I have my ticket. I have a rental car, right? Just remember, I'm broke. It's still costing me actually probably $100 more every month to do this job than I was earning. So every month I paid my credits. I always paid my credit cards, right? Good credit, but my credit card is every month, just a little bit more.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, now I'm in Vegas, so now I have to pay additional $200 for this job fair. So now I'm in Vegas. I go to this job fair. The examiner is the one who's running it. All right. Nice. I don't have this examiner's phone number. All right. He puts his phone number up on the board behind him. I pull my phone out. I text. I say, "Hey, yes, sir, this is Otto from West Palm Beach. Right? I'm here. Is there anyone you recommend I talk to?" He's like, he texts me back on the break. After he finished presents, he texts me back and he says, "We'll talk on the next break." So now we're finished. We're on our next, social break. I go up to him. He's like, "Hey, nice to see you. I thought you said you weren't coming." I was like, "Well, people told me to come." Right? So he then says to me, he's like, "Okay, well, what do you want?" Right? So I say, "Okay, I think I'm already in on the tour thing, but where do I want to end up? I want to end up in the oil and gas industry." So I tell him, I was like, oil and gas, because he said to me this. He's like, "If I recommend you, at a minimum, you're going to get a call, you're going to get an interview." So I'm like, okay, oil and gas, right? Well,
why oil and gas? Is it because the money's there?
Okay, so yes, money. In the helicopter industry, the most stable job you could get, and of course the companies matter. So which company are you going with matter. There's like the smaller companies, and then of course there's the big companies. So the most stable job you can have is in the big oil and gas helicopter companies in the helicopter industry. Why? Is because I'll give you an example. During COVID, my life never changed in COVID. Another thing, why? Because you still need gas, you still need plastics. Everything that the world runs on still runs on gas. So my job never was affected except traveling to and from work. But my paycheck came on time. I had nothing changed. My schedule was the same. Everything will never change. Yeah. Right. So stability and pay.
That's awesome. Okay. I have one question for you on that because he's asking what you want to do. Could you just name for the listeners like the top 3 industries if you could think of them off the top of your head?
Okay, so the first one is like finance wise. Well, it's competitive now. First, before it used to be oil and gas, and then I would say it was EMS, right? Emergency medical services, which is the helicopters that carry people to and from like emergency scenes or hospital to hospital.
Yep.
Well, oil and gas was the better one because you had that 14 and 14. You could live anywhere you really want. And you don't have to travel every week. Emergency medical services, they typically do a 7 and 7 or like a local 4 and 3 or whatever like that, right? So you if there was one here in town, which there is, I'll be working like 4 days a week, right?
So real quick, when you say things like 7 and 7, you mean 7 days on, 7 days off?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, so that's that. So oil and gas, EMS, are the top 2. EMS, I think, has been pushing ahead of oil and gas recently because they noticed they couldn't. There's something going on, and it's systemic. We see it in the news all the time. Oh, we need pilots. We need pilots. We need pilots. No one wants to be pilots anymore. It's too expensive to start. One, mm-hmm. right? And then 2, you don't make any money up front. So you finish, you get your licenses, and there's nothing for you to do. You're broke, and you're broke for the next few years. But then the jump is significant after that. But you have to be able to survive for maybe 3 years, 4 years before you could actually sort of make proper money.
Yeah.
Right? In my case, it took even longer because, of course, I came through in a different time. Right.
Yeah.
So now EMS was way less. I'll give you an example. An oil and gas captain used to make somewhere around in the lower 100 to upper 100, so somewhere between 1 and 200,000 a year. And he can make more depending on the contracts and stuff he accepts, right? So he can make somewhere between, average is somewhere between 100 to 200. A captain makes, not the co-pilot, but the captain makes that. Well, EMS back in the day was making 45.
Wow, for a
75.
Captain.
A good EMS was like 80. Now they're like slapped back right in the middle, like 155, 130, sign on bonus, blah, 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 blah. Now they are in a much better financial thing. Plus, you get to sleep in your own bed. Oh, you want to do EMS right here in town? Yeah, we're paying you this much. You could be here. Or captains are even willing to take a slight pay cut, going from like say 160 a year. He's down now to in the ballpark of let's say 120. He will accept that, especially if he has a family. He'll take that pay cut to stay home.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to factor those in. So those are the two main ones, and then there's not much more. Those are like the two main, and then there's a million other helicopter jobs after that.
Gotcha.
Okay,
So
cool. All right. So like back to the fair. Let's keep that.
So you tell me you want to do oil and gas.
Yeah. Oil and gas. He then recommends that I go talk to a specific guy at a booth of a big helicopter company, right? So I go up, I talk to this guy. The guy looks at me because I have my name tag right here. You know, like in any job fair, you can't have your name stuck on you here, right? He's like, looks at it. He's like, that name looks familiar. I was like, oh yeah, this guy, this examiner sent me. I was like, oh yeah, and he hands me a whole pamphlet of, you can imagine like lanyards, everything, pens, everything for this, highlighters,
swag
all
pack,
the information.
The swag pack.
Yeah, the swag pack, right? He gave me the swag pack, and he's like, he looks at my resume, and he's like, okay, cool. I'll get back to you, right? I leave. I go at other booths, right? I give resumes, and then on the end of it, trying to be courteous, I loop back around, and he gives me a more swag pack. He's like, oh, Otto, yeah, I put this to the side for you. So he gives me another bunch of stuff. So what did I do? I go, I interview at this tour location, and they said something which I thought was hilarious because the HR lady, I don't know why she said that. She's like, oh my goodness, Otto, you fit the image that this company wants, right? Because of my accent and all this different stuff. And
it's the beauty.
Well, she then says, and on top of all of that, you fit affirmative hire. So I look at her.
Your face. She said that.
She said HR said that to my face, and I look at her for a moment, and I was like, she doesn't realize what she just said, right? She's just so excited that she could check a box.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
But
I said I would take it.
Yeah, you were happy. I said, like, all right, cool, tight.
I will take it, right? So, but anyhow, I leave. I spoke to the chief pilot. I went to the tour operator. I did a tour of their facility, everything like that. And then that didn't work out. Why it didn't work out is because this tour company got bought over by a big EMS company, right? A helicopter company. And they ended up canceling my hire group because the Christmas season didn't go as well as they thought. So they ended up canceling my job offer there. But what happened was a week before that, I got a phone call from the big oil and gas company for interview. So I fly out to there, and unfortunately, it wasn't oil and gas that they flew me out for. They flew me out to do a tour job in Alaska.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter. You put me in a bigger helicopter, or in a turbine helicopter, and I'll kind of break that down. There's like the piston engine, like a regular car engines that are inside planes or helicopters. Then there's the turbines that you hear like on a jet that it makes that whine sound as it starts up. That's just the most basic thing I could say for like listeners who don't know the difference, right? You put me in any of a helicopter that has that, I will go wherever you want me to go. Alaska, I'm going to Alaska, right? Well, here is something that I didn't touch on earlier. We know already that I'm from Trinidad. After I got my licenses, I went back to Trinidad, did my conversions to the Trinidadian license, because I thought, okay, I'll start my career down here, and then I'll move back to the States, and then I'll just continue my career up here. But the chief pilots of one of the companies down there said to me, Otto, if you have the opportunity to never come back here, don't. Your career will be a lot quicker if you stay in the States.
Wow.
Okay, but hear this. I went down, I got the license. So I'm sitting there, and a typical interview, almost like what we're sitting down here. You guys are sitting down talking to me. It's a back and forth. We're laughing and stuff like that. And I see the chief pilot look down to my resume, right? Because they're asking questions about Alaska. Then he looks down at my resume, and he sees something. And of course, it's my resume. So I know where his eye is looking, and I know what he sees. He sees my Trinidadian licenses. He slides it over to the HR guy, and he points, right? And as he points, right, the conversation, all I noticed, they did a vector, right? They did a vector to like, would you be willing to work overseas? Yeah, of course. What do you say in a job interview? No, yeah, you say yeah.
Give me a job, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So
I'm broke.
And I'm broke. So the next day, and this is how they did it back then. The next day, you got a job offer. There was a big, like this guy who's like famous for a specific aircraft. He was in the hire group with us, and he was like an automatic in. They brought him to start up a program for an aircraft, so he's an in. Then they bring me in, and then the discussion doesn't seem like it's talking about Alaska. Right, and I was supposed to fly in a small single-engine helicopter as I'm the sole pilot. They started to talk about a Sikorsky 76, and a Sikorsky 76 is the IFR, which we discussed as an aircraft that normally flies in clouds and stuff like that, is capable of doing that. IFR twin engine, two engines that is going to be operating in the Gulf of Mexico. All right. And they're talking about if I like that helicopter, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait, what's going on? I'm coming in for a seasonal job.
Yeah.
And now they're talking about giving me a job which is full-time with benefits. And that's it. They offered me a co-pilot position in 76 in the Gulf of Mexico. Wow. But unfortunately, Otto, we need you to start soon. So could you come back here in 2 weeks to start class?
Oh shit!
Yes. I can start tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be there.
But of course, Mr. Professional here. I was like, oh man, this other guy who hired me in West Palm, it's because of the guy giving me that shot. I'm like, man, I'm here because he gave me that shot. I don't want to abandon him real quick. I want to call him and talk to him. So I was like, do you mind if I call my previous boss to see if he could release me that quick? Because normally it's a 2 weeks are fine, right? 2 weeks. But I call him and I was like, hey, this is what they're offering me, and they want me to start in 2 weeks. He's like, I'm interviewing your replacement right now. Take it.
Oh shit!
That's awesome. That's funny. You could have been like, Otto died. Take your own death.
No, but he was very supportive of it, and he's like, hell yeah, go catch you later.
Awesome, man.
Tell me about it later. So I accept the job. I walk out. I have a picture somewhere. My dad still has that picture, like of me standing out next to the 76 for the first time. And the reason why is because of the Trinidadian license. They were they were bidding for a contract in Trinidad. And I don't know what management is thinking, but this is my take on the matter. Ooh, we already could have a Trini, all right, a Trinidadian that is part of it, so it'll look even better that we're already hiring locals. I don't know. This is speculation, right? But I got the job, and I went from, let's talk about the basic monies, like starting in a oil and gas industry. You're talking about going from about 45, 55 as a flight instructor, which is high for 55 is high for a flight instructor, right? To about, I think my base was like 69,
Yes.
was my base, but I made more, right?
Yeah.
And how did I make more? Well, of course, you then add in training, right? You add in training days. They don't count training days into it. They don't count your 401k contributions into it, and then workover. And workover is time and a half. And if you sit down and do time and a half for like a first officer, you're talking about maybe in the ballpark of $500 a day for overtime. So where I went from $100 going up on my credit card every month, I paid off my credit cards in maybe 2 months. Oh, credit. When I say credit cards, credit card. It had one card that was creeping up, right? Yep, like
Yeah.
2 months of workover. So about in a period of like 4 months, that was it.
You know,
Nice.
what I'm hearing though, like throughout this entire process, which is pretty cool, is that you've had to pivot at every turn, and it didn't just fall into your lap, right? I mean, you kept grinding, you kept adding skills, you had to network, right, to get where you're going to the next job, right?
Yeah,
You didn't just
you
stay
had
in
to.
place.
Yeah. You can't wait for it to come to you. You have to keep doing what you could do to elevate yourself in whatever field you're doing.
Yeah.
And then in my case, the way I always attempt, so what you guys don't, what I didn't get into is the doors that didn't open to me. Of course, we never talk about the applications I sent out that I never got a call back for.
Yeah.
I've tried in multiple different companies, you know, I knocked on multiple different doors. I've called multiple chief pilots, right? And certain doors never open. But then when certain doors do open, you're just like, oh, that was easy, right? But there was a lot of work leading up to it, but the transition from one step to the other became a lot simpler.
That's
Yeah, it's
awesome, man.
pretty
And that's
cool.
like key. Like sometimes what's meant for you is meant for you guys. And so if you're trying to force something and it's not happening, it's because it's not meant to happen. But
Mhm.
what will happen for you and what's meant to happen for you, sometimes the door just opens up and you just like waltz right in. But let's keep this
Exactly.
moving on, dude. We're kind of getting a little bit behind on time. So
Oh,
let's
yeah,
talk
yeah.
real quickly on you being first officer to captain and then getting into search and rescue.
Okay, so getting into helicopters, and I'll be real quick. I fell in love with an aircraft called the AW-139. It's a Gusto Westland 139. It's now owned and it's made by a company called Leonardo. I came across a video on YouTube that was showing this aircraft doing search and rescue work, and I was like, oh man, that is where I would like to be. So I got this job. I'm about the age of 27 or 28, and I said to myself, my goal is to be captain by the age of 30. Right, of a 139, right? I want to be captain of a 139 by the age of 30. So time progresses. I was about 28 or 20. I was 29 when my captaincy option came up, but then due to someone losing their job, I got pigeonholed into a position that did not require another captain. So I was stuck there for about 2 years, right? One of the things I would say that I learned from this is working with a troublesome captain. You know, you're not guaranteed to have an awesome captain. You know, there are guys out there that will make your day-to-day job just hell, right? It got to the point that I had to listen to yoga music in the morning just to prep myself to continue on the day, right? When it was time, so this is about, as I said, it's 27, so I'm about 2 years. I'm about 31 now. I'm just about to turn 31. So it's June. It's July of my third. So I just turned 31 in June. It is July that year. I'm getting my captain training and my captain check writer exam coming up. I said nothing to the guy that I was with, right? Because I knew he would do something to try to ground the aircraft or whatever to prevent my training. Well, the day of the exam, the mechanic walked in, and just to poke the bear, he said, "Hey, Otto, we have enough time on your aircraft for your training and the exam. You're good to go." And he walks off, right? So the captain looks at me. Of course, I'm sitting there in yoga music, right? And he looks at me. He's like, "What is he talking about?" I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah. the instructor examiner is coming to do my captain ride. He's on the way, right? He turns back and I can see the gears turning. And the gears are turning and he looks back to me and he says, man, I don't think you are ready for your captain ride, right? You fly this aircraft like you're scared of it, blah, 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 blah. So what I'm trying to get at is for the naysayers, people, when you're on your grind and you're doing your thing, people are going to come back and want to talk shit. Well, guess who became a captain that day? Just to show him, right?
Oh, yeah, I'll show you.
Right? So the next step was I didn't see a pathway, or I didn't look to see like I didn't know how to get to the search and rescue. I have no search and rescue. I'm not a previous military guy. I have no search and rescue experience. So what then happened was they became an opportunity for international contract we had that does helicopter air ambulance in South America. So I took that job. Right? Cool.
Same company, right?
Same company, yeah, same company, just another opportunity elsewhere in the same company, right? So I take that job down there, and so I did that for about maybe a few months, and then they contact me and they did a bid, or they won a bid with a very famous space company, right? And
that
they
you may know currently,
that everyone may know, and they needed a lead pilot for to recover the astronauts. So when the astronauts come back, they needed a helicopter to go out to get the astronauts and bring them to the beach, to the hospital, in case they get hurt. If they're hurt, if they're not hurt, we don't need to do it, right?
What would you say the company is run by a guy whose name rhymes with Elon Tusk?
I neither confirm nor deny the truth of that statement. Right?
All right, continue.
So okay. So that company, we the unfortunate thing is we lost that contract, right? But what that allowed me to do is that I came back and we did drills with the space company, and I was able to add something to my repertoire, which is NVGs, night vision goggles. So now I'm flying. I'm a HA certified pilot, and now I am doing flying under night vision goggles, which is nothing spectacular, but it's interesting because it's a stepping stone. I'm slowly picking up all the requirements for search and rescue without knowing it. Well, while I'm on this contract and having meetings with this space guy in this same office that I'm in, I'm talking to like space engineers and astronauts on this same screen, right? I'm getting a contact from my boss saying, "Hey, we're gonna pull you off of this contract. We have a position that came available. Unfortunately, a position became available because someone lost a job, right? And on the search and rescue team." So I was able to transition from that to the search and rescue team, which of course now let's talk about the like I guess the compensation portion of it. I went from my base pay was about 60 something, right? To getting, with all the work overtime and stuff I was making, I was pretty much sitting around 100, right? And then when I got my captaincy, I moved up to about the mid, like somewhere between 100 to 150. When I was in South America, I made up to somewhere just under 200, right? But then when I moved back to the States, because of the contract differences, I dropped back down, I would say around the mid 150s, somewhere around there. Yeah, mid 150s. It was the mid 150s.
Okay.
I was still a captain, but it's just the contract in South America. I was making more because of travel days. They'll pay for the days I'm on a plane just going to work. But in being here in the States, they don't pay for that. You know, they allow you to live where you want. It's up to you to get to work on your own time.
And you just bring up a good point that I had written out in my notes that you didn't really touch on, is like the change in quality of life from being an instructor at CFI to now go into this. What's the change in quality of life? What was the schedule like? You know,
I haven't fallen asleep in an aircraft since.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you grind hard and you're just trying to get to that next stage. And I didn't understand. Of course, as I said, I didn't know I was falling asleep. That's the main thing. It's only when it happened in that authoritative state, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm that tired. That's when I pulled the throttle back on it. Now I'm working almost 8 days a week when I was in West Palm, because I'll work Monday.
I'm sorry, how many days a week?
8. Sorry, 7 days a week. Yeah, 7 days a week. Right. So I was working eight days a week. Right.
I
You
live
sleep.
8 days a week. Yeah.
You sleep at this time, and I split up the days. Right.
Yeah. That's exactly what's going on. I live it 8 days a week. I outwork you 10
Yeah.
10 days out of a week at a time. What?
Right.
What are you talking about?
So those 6 days is the official thing that I'm supposed to work. But if I wanted to fly the turbine helicopters, I had to come in on the Sunday. Right.
Okay.
So that's, again, as JR was saying, is sometimes you just have to do it. Right.
Yeah.
But don't let it get to a point that you become dangerous, which once I realized my state, I throttled back. Now, this job, 14 days on, 14 days off. Okay, well, when you go to work at first, it's very tasking because you have certain days you're flying a lot, but then there are other days you show up and you have no flights on your schedule. So what do? You prep the aircraft and you go take a nap. All right.
Nice.
Now, search and rescue is a different story. Search and rescue, I make a joke, and the joke is I watch Netflix full time and I fly helicopters every now and again. So you spend a lot of time just waiting for something to happen, and the only thing I'll say is the nervous part of search and rescue is night op, because you may be just sitting down or like on a recliner, pass out, taking a nap or something like that, and the alarm goes off, and the alarm is on like a phone, and it's a siren. So you're in a trailer of about 5 guys, which is 2 pilots. And you have a medic, a hoist operator, which is the guy who controls dropping the guy down from the aircraft on the hook, and an emergency swimmer. So if someone is in the water, we need to send a swimmer out to rescue them. And so yeah, I ended up getting that. The compensation for that in the past was in the ballpark of I think it was 7 to 10, depending on the amount of time you have in the career. Now the compensation for something like that, I think, is in the ballpark of I'm thinking 20s.
Okay, and when you say 20, you mean as a bonus?
As an addition, yeah, bonus onto your salary.
Okay, awesome. And then last question before we kind of move on to another segment is, you talk about the quality of life being good, but what's the schedule like, right? You work 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, correct?
Mm-hmm. The 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, I think it's good. I also worked a 28 and 28. That one is a little bit different, and what is different about that, at least for me, and I only can speak about myself, the 14 and 14, I'm home for those 14 days, or technically they say 14, but you're technically home for 12 days, because 2 of those days are travel days for the most part, right? So you're home for 12 days. It's just enough for you to say, I'm kind of bored, I'm ready to go make money, right? And then on the other side is, after your 2 weeks at work, is I'm kind of tired of here, I want to go back home, right?
Yeah.
And it's a good rotation. But the hardest thing I would say about this type of life, and I'm talking about the travel life, it's not just working 14 days on and 14 days off in your same town. When you have to go somewhere, is you miss a lot of important things with friends and families. You're like, oh, hey, it's this is my birthday weekend, or this wedding is coming. I can just look at my schedule. So let's look at a pro. I know every day I'm off next year already. So you'll be like, hey, let's go on a snowboarding trip. I'm like, put it in this week, I'm good to go, right? But if it's on a work week, I could put in for vacation. But I'll tell you this, I haven't taken 1 day of vacation in the 9 years I've worked for this company, because after my 2 weeks off, I'm kind of ready to go.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
I sell my vacation.
Yeah,
you want to lead us into the next segment?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to, your job is based where?
In Louisiana.
In Louisiana, you live in Florida. So that's what the traveling that you mentioned is related to. But you could live in Louisiana, if you wanted to. But
my bosses will agree with you.
Yeah, so that's always an option. But I think you're happier to be around family, and your job allows that traveling. But we could quickly segment into some of the joys, the challenges of the job. You've mentioned some of the dangerous flying you've done, some of the interesting things and tours that you've done, flying out to oil rigs, doing search and rescue. Do you have any cool stories that you can share from any part of the job that you've done?
So let's the search and rescue aspect is, I would say, among the coolest things, because your job is, and you have to kind of make sure that you don't get this Captain America, I need to save someone mentality, because that the primary thing is I'm a pilot first. My responsibility is not the person I'm rescuing, but it's the aircraft and my crew. And that's including the guy I have on a hook that I'm lowering down beneath the helicopter. That's my primary responsibility. Rescuing the person comes after that. So one of the coolest things I would say is the camaraderie you get when you're working with guys in a industry that, or in a job that you're relying on everyone else to do their job correctly so you could come home safely. Right? So we've had chasing down a boat. So I'm in a helicopter at 50 feet over the water, doing about not much compared to Nick, but doing about 8 to 15 miles per hour in rough seas at night. So I'm under NVG's goggles, and I need to put a guy in a 10 by 10 spot between crates on this moving boat as it's hitting waves, right? And you're just seeing waves, like water splashing over the front of the vessel, right? As you're chasing it down to put this guy down. I think is one of the coolest things about the job, that you're like, I see a guy on the ground. He was in my helicopter a little while ago, right? And then you see them rescue the guy. They put them on the backboard, and they're all cool with their helmets and their thing, and they're giving you all the signals. And then you go and you hook it up. Then you're seeing, I don't get to see the patient coming up, but I can see the guy tending a rope to make sure the guy isn't spinning anything. We get the patient up, they secure the patient, and then we fly them back. But then we get to the hospital, right? And we wave at the cute nurses, and then we just kind of just have to sit there and wait and be like, okay, well, time to go back to watch Netflix until we do it again.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome, man.
That's nerve-wracking.
I specifically, and everyone here knows that I have a newfound appreciation for search and rescue, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely experienced the whole aspect of being rescued out of the water, and what the pilots do, what the swimmers or the SAR swimmers do. It's an amazing job and absolutely necessary. So that's really cool, man. Yeah,
that's pretty
we
sick.
Appreciate you.
Any near-death experiences you've had flying? And in the news a couple years ago, there was a helicopter go down with a very high-profile athlete on board, and it kind of raises that, I guess, caution against helicopters, that sometimes it can be dangerous.
So training is very important. The issue with the famous athlete is, and I can also add, the guy who gave me the job in West Palm, he also passed away in a helicopter crash in the Bahamas, flying a high profile. Huh?
Can you touch on that story?
So when I was in West Palm Beach, one of the helicopters I flew was connected to a multi-billionaire, and he also owned an island in the Bahamas. One of my jobs was to operate his aircraft for him, pick him up, take him to his private island, come back. Well, I moved on in my career. Now I'm operating a bigger version of that helicopter he had, which he ended up getting the same AW139 after I left, and he ended up it was a late night flight over. They picked him up because there was possibly a medical emergency on the island, and then the pilots got disoriented. Same thing that happened with the pro athlete. The pilot got disoriented and lost control of the aircraft in both states, and one went into the water in the Bahamas, the other one went into the mountain or the hills in California. Yep. Right. So my situation is not associated to a disorientation. Mine, I've had close incidences with equipment malfunction, and everything is it's man-made. All aircraft are man-made, so they're susceptible to having malfunctions whenever it decides to have the malfunction. And the thing about pilots, this is where I think pilots are going to be around for a little bit longer, because people don't fully rely on computers yet. Right, not until like computers are like driving you to and from, and like all your cargo is being moved by computers. They're not going to be okay not having a pilot up front, right? Because pilots are there for when stuff goes wrong. When the computer is not doing what it needs to do, the pilot needs to be able to do what a computer is expected to do. So in my case, I've had incidences over open water. It only happens at night. Well, it only happens to me at night, right? Of the malfunction happening, and it requires overextension of power on the engine, which then grounds the aircraft for maintenance issues, and then others we were able to get out of it. But what I would say is the number one thing to add is make sure you put in your safety margins into any operation you do. Don't fly it to the edge if you don't have to, right? Because when you're on the edge, that's where when something goes wrong, it doesn't give you much response time. So I gave myself a little bit of a cushion because it didn't need me to be at the edge, and I was able to fly the aircraft out of the incidences I may have had. But nothing resulted in any, just to be specific, nothing resulted in any catastrophic damage to the aircraft or maintenance issues. Everything, the aircraft was always released back into service by the next day, and no one got injured.
Yeah. Would you say, great. Like, as far as margin for error there, what are you speaking about? Like altitude? Like, what are you giving yourself as that margin?
In my case, it was altitude.
Okay.
We were, just to simplify it, we were doing some training that required us to be at altitude of, it was okay that if we could be at an altitude of 100 feet, right? Versus say that we're actually doing a deployment of, say, a swimmer, right? Deployment of a swimmer required us to be down to 50 feet, but we weren't actually physically deploying a swimmer, so I opted for us to be at 100 feet. Well, in some of the incidences, the aircraft didn't recover from the malfunction until like about 80 feet, right? So you can imagine if I was at the altitude I should be, that is only 30 feet above the ground, which is what? A second, by the second story of a building? This 30 feet? That's about? Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's too close. That's too close for me. So I opt to just give myself a little bit more of a margin.
Yeah.
And for clarification, your training prepared you for that moment, or was that sort of like, oh my gosh, you have to figure this out?
No, training is it, and that's what happens is also in a flight instructor, and my flight instructor experience, and this is flight instructor from being a flight instructor for so many years. I don't even know how many thousands of hours of instruction I've given at this point, and this is throughout my career of being just a instructor, being personal trainer, martial arts instructor, to flight instructor, to basic flight instructor, to a Part 135. When I mean Part 135, for those who are not aware of what it is, Part 121 is airline operation. Part 135 is like charter work. Like you hire me to take you from point A to point B.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, let's kind of move forward into the next segment here. But one thing I just wanted to touch on with you saying is the stability of the pilot and aviation industry in general. So I completely agree that we're going to need pilots into the future for a while, right? So even if we have dual redundancy AI, operation on these aircraft, we're always going to need at least one pilot, like a live pilot, to sit there as a backup. So right now there's two pilots. We're going to at least need one to back up that system in the future. So there's still going to be a need for pilots well into the future. All right, Jay or Yo, you guys want to take us to the next segment?
Yeah, man. So, we just want to kind of touch on, and we mentioned this or alluded to it when we started, your future plans for your aviation career. But I just want you to mention, where are you now in your hours as a helicopter pilot?
I'm in the mid 4,000s.
Mid 4,000s. Okay, and you're 36.
36, yes.
Yeah, 36 years old. Okay, so at this point in your career, where do you see yourself in the future? Let's say 5 years, 10 years. What are you doing with it?
So the unfortunate truth is I am at my 20-year goal at 9 years.
Nice.
Oh my God.
So where I expected myself in 20 years, I'm here in less than 10. And what do you do from here? So like I was pondering, knowing that I was coming on this podcast, I was pondering like what kind of piece of information I could give that's an epiphany for me. And the epiphany is as you go up in any company, the pay increases, right? But
Yeah.
then you get to a point that the pay increases, but the work exponentially increases, right? So you're like, oh, the responsibility. So you're like, oh, I am at a position that my life, my quality of life, as Nick likes to say, he says quality of life quite often, which is really good. My quality of life is pretty decent here from the pay I'm getting. But then you take a step up from where I'm at, which now I'm no longer flying an aircraft as much, but I'll be flying a desk way more, right? But the responsibility jumps significantly. So it's a small increase in pay, but the responsibility is way, way more. So in my career, unfortunately, I've peaked. I've peaked within my comfortability and on where I would like to step up. Right. So what does that mean? Well, time for me to figure out the next task to try to dominate. Right. What is it? Well, is it it might be attempting to start my own business. It may be attempting to branch out into a different operation in aviation. Right. So as of right now, I'm on that cusp of okay, well, let's reinvest. And what's the best thing to reinvest in?
Yourself.
Myself, right? So I'm taking time and money to invest and expand my knowledge in the aviation field and even in the business field.
That's awesome, dude.
Gotcha.
Very
So,
cool.
so man, so it's a lot that you've had to go through just throughout the entire time. What advice would you have for someone who is starting out and wanting to become a helicopter pilot?
Okay, number one thing is no one wants to be pilots. As I said, it's a big pill to swallow in the beginning. Now, especially in the fixed wing side, and fixed planes again, there's a lot more. It's a lot more tantalizing. Why? Because the airlines, everyone needs to get places. You know, you need to go on vacation. You need to go to places for work. You need to go see family. You always need to go from point A to point B. Everyone doesn't live and stay in one spot, right? So as a job and a career, they're always going to need us, but there are less people becoming us. And what I mean us, pilots, right? So if there's a field to go into, it is the aviation field. And what I mean is it is a good option to get into if you have the financial capabilities to get into it. And you have the capability to take the hit for the first few years, like bank on at least 4 years of just hurting, right? And then after that, you'll start to maybe work your way up. I heard a statistic last night, which I don't know how true it is. I haven't done my own work on it, but I've heard 80% of the people who start flight training don't actually make it through, right? They may go and they may even do their first solo course country, like me, and fly by themselves without an instructor. Some of them may even go and just get their first license, but 80% of them don't actually make it to the end. And then after they make it to the end, so let's say it's only 20% makes it to the end, there are even less jobs lined up after. So you get a lot of guys who have commercial license and flight instructor license who don't even get a job because they barely made it through the program. No company hires a guy who just barely made it to be an instructor, right? It's not exact like Dr. Yo-Yo. Do you want the guy who barely made it through med school operating on you? No, you want the guy who killed it in med school operating on you, right? So that's the thing is those people fall to the wayside. And then the others end up actually making it to their first instructor job. But then they end up at a company like mine and they don't make it through training, right? Or they're perpetually a co-pilot, right? So understand, yeah, it comes like any other career. You have to try to rock at it. You have to try to be awesome at it. And if it Swiss cheese, sometimes it takes some of this Swiss cheese lining up for you to finally be able to say, to get where I'm at. Like, example where I'm at the age I'm at. Typically, like in one of the locations I train, which is in the simulators, which is very similar to the airline simulators. I'm probably one of the youngest guys walking around, right? As an instructor, most of the guys that are walking around are more mature men, well grade. Well, if I was great, right? A lot more salt and pepper than I, but typically that's what it is. So even where I'm at, it's and just to kind of touch on it just slightly, there are not many people of my complexion doing this job. There's not many people of my complexion that even is an instructor in this job. So you're talking about when I'm walking around being a young guy of this hue doing what I do, it is very few and far between.
Yeah, man, unique. That's awesome, dude. Thank you so much.
I want to throw something at you I want to throw something real quick. So just quick pivot, because often we talk about this balance between pursuing your career and having a family a little bit, right? So like, where does that fit into this entire thing, or maybe even the next 5 years, like your own personal family? I mean, is that realistic as you're going through training, or is it more realistic now? Like, just what are your thoughts?
Way more realistic now. Okay, so as a as a student, you're broken. No, right? You could date, right? Don't have kids. Don't get married.
Can't do it in 2023, bro. Taking them to 5-star restaurants. So that's
you just can't. You can't afford it. Right?
Not in 2023.
As a flight instructor, you could pretend, because people will look and be like, "Oh, you're a pilot.
You'll pretend,
broke, right?"
Yeah.
So you go through that, but then you get this type of job, right? And then all of a sudden you start making proper money, and then you're like, okay, so if I have to say, if you're going through the program and stuff like that, or you're a young man go through the program, date, chill, don't. Your career is your serious girlfriend, right? But then once you're in the career of like, okay, now I'm in a career. I mean, I'm in a proper company. I could sit here at this company for the next 30 years. Now you're in a position that you could start dating, right?
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, I don't think that many people would get where you are today if they were prioritizing dating and maybe had like a kid or so.
Yeah, I mean that flexibility to like, yeah, I'll take the contract and go work in South America. Yeah, I'll go work in Alaska, and just having that flexibility. When you have a family, that you can't do that,
And that's one of the biggest benefits, and to that quality of life, and your 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, like, is one of the biggest quality of life that I see in this job. Is you can live wherever you want, especially as like a single guy. You could be like, man, I want to go live in New York just sign a lease in New York. You live there for a year, and it's like, all right, now I want to go live in LA or Miami. You have the freedom to do all that, and that's amazing. But let's kind of wrap up here. There's one last thing that we like to do. There's going to be a fire round. I'm going to ask you a couple different questions, and then we'll have you just rapidly answer them. Some of these you may have answered before. If something just pops to your head, whatever is the first thing that popped to your head, go ahead and answer, okay? It's quick answers.
Let's go.
All right. You ready? All right. What is your title currently?
I'm a I'm a AW-139 EC-135 search and rescue star check airman.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, it's a long line. Yeah.
It's your man.
All right. How long in total from start of pilot training to where you are now? How long did that take?
Okay, so we're in 2023. We're going from 08, so that's 2, 10, 15 years.
Damn. All right. And total hours, I know you said it earlier, but you might say it one more time.
About 4,400 and something.
Awesome. And then salary range from starting to what you're making right now, or a range.
Okay, started in the ballpark of 20 something. I said first, and then now I'm in the range of 150 to 200.
Okay, not bad. All right, wrapping up. What's the best thing that you enjoy about your job right now?
my off time.
Most people would say that. That's awesome. You do
No, no,
have
no.
really good.
I do what I do because of the off time. But being an instructor, I like teaching.
Yeah.
I've always it's I seem that I've always gotten into the instructor role in any job I end up doing, and I think it's because I just like teaching people to do whatever it is,
Yeah,
or I
man.
just like having the control.
That's amazing. And off time for you allows you to pursue so many hobbies, and it's so unique to other jobs. What's the worst thing about this job, in your opinion? What don't
Being
you
away
enjoy?
when I would like to be able to do stuff with certain family and friends.
Yeah, that's so many jobs. The other flip side of that is many jobs people could be in the same place, right? So you go to work, you come back, you can still go out with your friends,
On the
have
weekends, yeah,
dinners and
not
stuff.
me.
All that. Yeah, that's a huge thing. All right, last thing. What's one piece of advice that you give to an aspiring pilot off the bat to get to where you're at right now?
One piece.
Don't
More or
date.
less what we
piece.
just said. Grind first.
Grind
Grind
first.
first.
Okay. Which I
Grind
think most
first.
people would say that, and Alex was giving the same advice when we had him
Yeah.
on. So, dude, yeah, that's huge. Well,
So
thank you so much.
can I elaborate on that just really quick?
Real
Go
quick.
ahead.
Just really quick.
Yeah.
My mom, our mom said, don't settle down until the age of 30. Before 30 is on you for your career. Bust your ass until 30. Once you're at 30, then you could open up other stuff. So you have 30 years to elevate yourself. Right? Before you waste time on something else.
Day one, baby, 30 years. That's right.
Yeah, yo, she's
Training days.
yo, mom. She's a real boy mom. She really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
She really is, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's awesome, dude. Well, hey, thank you so much. Let's
Yeah.
start wrapping this up, boys.
Let's do it.
Yeah, dude. Awesome. I had a great time talking to you, and you are my brother, and I've learned some shit about you today and some stories that I never heard, and got to know you a lot better. So, that's, magical. I'm super happy to have you on. Had a great time.
Dude, you
Thanks.
did so awesome. This was great.
Yeah.
You learned so much. People that are interested in aviation would get so much out of listening to this. Just your story and how that all came together. It was so in-depth and detail. It was amazing. We also know that you're now Tiger Woods' secret nemesis.
Waiting for round 3.
I'll find you if it's the last thing I do. You made me bogey on this hole, you mother.
Where can we find you on social media?
Maybe one day I'll meet him and he'll be like,
I listen to that podcast. I know it's you.
Where listeners find you on social media? Are you putting that stuff out there?
oh, no.
No,
Keeping that
no
low
social.
key.
Keeping it low key. Got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right, dude. Well, thanks
Perfect.
again. Thanks. Now to the listeners, thank you guys so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. If you like this, tune in some more to the 3M podcast for future career tactics. We're going to be bringing on incredible, individuals who have achieved so much in their careers, and we're excited that you guys are tuning in. Thank you guys. See ya.
Peace.
Outro.